Good evening, and ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Halloween episode of Paranormal Encyclopedia. Yes, we know that technically Halloween is next week, but since we're going to be doing the show the day after Halloween, although Dios de los Muertos and All Saints Day, we'll be doing something for then too.
Yeah, we can't necessarily associate ourselves as saints per se.
Not us.
Well, maybe me. I am the one Christian of the trio. I am planning on going upstairs when I die.
Come downstairs. The cookies are better and the music's awesome.
Think about how many great musicians, including Elvis for that matter, started out as gospel singers.
Yeah, and then they reached the age of enlightenment.
And the great musicians of old, how many of them wrote religious music?
And how many didn't? There you go.
None of which remotely relates to tonight's topic.
Oh, of course not.
So, as has been our tradition, we didn't do it for Halloween last year, funny enough. But we did it for Christmas, we did it for Easter, we did it for a bit for St. Patrick's Day. We're going to talk about where does Halloween come from?
Ooh. I'm even in costume tonight. I'm dressed like a normal person.
Yeah, which is frightening.
I'm dressed as Darth Vader.
Yep. And the
Yes.
many emotions of Darth Vader. And then, well, we've got something special in store for you. I alluded to it on the Facebook, and I'm going to allude to it again. We're going to be talking about, I think it's fair to say, the most legendary of all haunted houses.
The Winchester Mansion?
We can talk about that one, too.
There you go.
I'm thinking my end of the street of haunted houses.
Yep. Amityville.
Then he goes and spoils it. Tension.
No.
Now we have anticipation.
Yes.
Yeah, but that was...
But
I can't take him anywhere.
No.
Of course, as always, particularly now, feel free to call in 609-807-2492, 609-807-2492.
And who are you?
And yes, who are we? So I am Kevin Mears, demonologist, paranormal encyclopedia. This is...
Brian McKinley, vampire author and godfather of paranormal thrillers.
And Baron Voltage, the guy that seems to remember everything.
And the small medium at large.
Always. Just remember, I like it without cream.
So...
I don't even know what that meant.
Good.
So the first thing to get out of the way, of course, is our one of our two sponsors.
Yes.
And we're going to be and I want to talk about my new side series as well, which I'm going to be doing a new episode of tomorrow.
Awesome sauce.
So first, our sponsor. Keep in mind, folks, if you like to read like us, and you're probably listening to the wrong radio show if you don't, given how many authors we have on, including one of our co-hosts, Audible is a great thing to check out, especially if you do a lot of driving, a lot of other things where you can do something to listen to. It is audiobooks. It's a very reasonable $15 a month. There's a code in the description, which is audibletrial.com/paranormale, audibletrial.com/paranormale, which will give you a free 1 month's membership and a free audiobook. There are literally thousands of books to choose from. All of Brian's books are on there.
Yes.
One of our good friends and recent guests, Dacre Stoker, just released his new book, Dracula, the prequel to Dracula.
Read it cover to cover. Good book.
Yeah, sadly, I've been so busy with so many things. I'm getting to about the halfway point. It is a great book. So
Eventually, we'll get him on and talk about it.
Yes,
Yeah, without a
and
doubt.
JD. We want to have JD as well.
Yes.
They
Yeah,
were both great guys.
JD Barker
We'll
was
get to meet
great.
them. It's a great book. I recommended his other book, Dracula the Undead, which is the family-sanctioned sequel to Dracula, is on there too. I had read it before, but I just got a copy of Dracula the Undead because I want to listen to it again.
Yeah.
I'm kind of figuring it's like read Dracula, read Dracula, read Dracula the Undead, just do the whole trilogy.
Yes, the Black Cape trilogy.
See how it holds together.
Yeah, see how the story goes. But the other thing I want to talk about, and I am actually currently working on trying to get somebody from it on, ideally more than one, somebody on it for the show. So really neat thing I just started. So it's called Empty Faces. It's like those loot crates other shows do, except it's horror. One, it's horror. And two, instead of just, you get a bunch of doodads and odds and ends, it's a story. Each month building on it, and you get puzzles and riddles and things to solve and mysteries to work out. But if you go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/paranormal encyclopedia, or just look at Paranormal Encyclopedia on YouTube, You can find it's my new series, Empty Faces of the Woods. I'll be going through each box, showing you what's in there, giving some my thoughts as an investigator and as kind of an expert on the paranormal, on the various things I'm come across. I'm going to be trying to avoid spoilers as much as possible, but it is a really neat program. And it's a lot of fun. I did the first episode's already up. That next episode I'll be filming live, possibly tomorrow, if not sometime over the weekend.
I'm still waiting for you to give me a cryptex that you can't solve.
I broke it.
I hate you.
I brought the stuff with me so you can check it out though. It's in the car.
Sweet.
The first one, so that you don't spoil anything from the new one for me. But
There you go.
so first of all, before we get into Amityville, since Mr. Spoilers,
See, it's his
let's
fault,
talk
not mine
about,
for once.
the origins of Halloween. David Walter in our chat has correctly pointed out that it comes from pagan tradition.
Yes.
Specifically, it comes from the Celts.
Yep.
Yep.
Samhain.
Yes, Samhain. Occasionally incorrectly pronounced as Samhain, but Beth and Brian are correct. It is Samhain.
It has a freaking M in it.
There's another common mistake with it, actually, and it's a mistake that inspired both one of my childhood loves, which was the real Ghostbusters cartoon, and one of my more recent fun things, which is Supernatural.
There you go.
Originally, Samhain is a festival to honor the dead. It's a festival tied to the harvest at the end of the year, obviously.
Hence pumpkins. and-
Yes. No, not pumpkins originally.
I know. Originally, they were like turnips and things
Gourds.
that they had.
Yeah, it was turnips and gourds and things like that. And you look at pictures of them, and it's a little creepier when it's a turnip.
Yeah, they look like little mummies.
For anyone who doesn't know,
Shrunken
by the
heads.
way, the reason why it wasn't pumpkins is there are no pumpkins in Europe. It's something
that was a
native
Native
to the Americas.
Because we like doing everything bigger.
But it was believed that on Samhain, because it was the ending of the year, things are getting darker, and it's a harvest, the dead would come back
Can't get any
and
darker
walk
than that.
the world again. So it was a night to honor. It wasn't necessarily a scary thing, but it was a night to honor the dead. But granted, along with the spirits of the dead and the spirits of your ancestors, the darker things came back too. So you set up bonfires to keep the negative spirits away. You the tradition of children going around in costume was, the spirits would come to your door and give us a treat, or we'll play a trick on you, ergo trick or treat.
You know, I have to wonder, what would be an old school, back in the day type of trick back then? Because with us, it egg our houses. If you were egging somebody's
Ding
house
dong
back
ditch.
then, there were doorbells back in that day.
Ditch.
Oh, please.
You think kids have changed that much?
I think they've gotten more creative.
They would probably vandalize, do all kinds of creative, like lootings or little things like that.
I'm betting rotten fruit,
Yeah.
possibly eggs, probably spoiled eggs, depending on the area, and just, well, probably knock on the door, run away.
They used to do that at Christmas too, back in the old English Christmas.
Yep.
There was a lot more mischief on Christmas and a lot less
I don't know.
just jolly.
Christmas originally was a very drunken, rowdy holiday.
Yeah,
I am not
so much so
saying the
that they
C
banned
word.
it in the New World.
I'm not saying the
Yeah.
C word till after Thanksgiving, okay?
Yeah. Although they used to tell ghost stories on Christmas too. The one Christmas song references it. There'll be scary ghost stories and tales of the Lord. But we're not here about to talk about Christmas. It ain't. It is Halloween season.
Yes.
Darn it! It is not Christmas season. So at any rate, all these traditions were picked up by the Roman Catholic churches that gradually converted Europe to Christianity, particularly Catholicism, and they adopted not Halloween October 31st, Samhain, but November 1st as All Saints' Day, the day to honor the souls that have gone to heaven, and particularly the souls that have been canonized by the Catholic Church. Then Halloween becomes All Hallows Eve to honor that. And there's even a tradition at some points where kids would dress up as their favorite saint to go trick or treating.
I can imagine somebody is Peter upside down on a cross walking on their hands.
would
Somebody's
be
got to do
awesome.
it. Somebody's got to do it.
And send us a picture.
It'd be
Yes.
a great costume.
You do that, I will personally give you a hypno session.
There you go. And then, of course, November 2nd, is All Souls Day, which is the day to honor everybody who's dead. in the Catholic tradition, just by virtue of there was a realization, particularly among the Catholics at least, that the people, even with the falling away of the ancestor worship that was more common in older times, you still needed to honor the dead. You still needed a day to remember them, which is what those were for. Now, I will say this, based on personal experience as an investigator, it is hardly the only holiday where this is true, but activity does undeniably kick up a notch around Halloween.
I believe it. Although I will say this, though. It's interesting when it comes to Catholic tradition because it's sort of like a trilogy of days. You've got Hallows Eve, All Saints Day, All Souls Day. They seem to have a prevailing, monopoly on 3-day holidays throughout the year. Have we noticed this?
They like threes.
They love threes.
The Trinity.
Yes.
Easter,
Yeah, there you go. Easter, Christmas,
Christmas is only the two, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day.
3 Kings.
Although the Bible doesn't actually call, that's
Yes,
really,
it does.
No,
Melchior, Balthazar, and Gaspar.
Not mentioned by name in the Bible, not mentioned as kings in the Bible. In fact, they're not kings in the Bible. That kings was added by that song "We Three Kings of Orient Are." The names came out of folklore. And the number 3, the Bible doesn't say how many there was, and tradition says it was anywhere between 1 and 3,000.
Oh,
Can you imagine 3,000 all bringing frankincense, myrrh, and
Yeah.
gold.
The reason it's
needs
usually
myrrh?
thought to be 3 is there were 3 gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So, and then the 3 that everyone sees are usually traditionally white, Asian, and African American to represent, at the time, the 3 people of the world, all coming to bear homage to Jesus. None of which is accurate.
Yeah, imagine that,
The tree wise guys.
Yeah.
The tree wise guys. They all showed up to give, tribute.
Because this does get creepy for a second. I'll touch on it briefly. The 3 wise men were what are called magi.
Yeah.
Yes.
Magi were not kings. They were the priestly castes of Persia in the Zoroastrian religion. Now, where this gets creepy
And Halloweeny.
is if you read the reports of any other magical tradition in the ancient world at the time, the Magi were the bad boys of magic. They were the necromancers, the ones that summoned demons. They were the ones that nobody wanted to screw with.
So in other words, they were Dean, Sam, and Castiel.
Not nearly that friendly.
They were the wise guys.
They were Rowena.
My lady.
And Alistair. They were the we don't want to mess with those dudes showing up to see Jesus.
Would you want to mess with the Winchester? Come on.
Yeah, but they're generally on the trying to save people, not so much with the Magi. The other there's a whole bunch of other things there, but this is something to get into closer to Christmas because this is Halloween, darn it. We do
Yes.
not approve of changing Halloween, of starting Christmas in July. No.
No.
Christmas is in
true.
December.
If I see Christmas lights up at your house now, understand there is now a bullseye. That's all I'm going to say.
I'll put it like this: I think there's an old superstition we should turn into a tradition. The tradition was, or the superstition was, that it was bad luck to put any Christmas decorations up before Christmas Eve itself, and then you had to take them all down within 12 days.
That's a crunch.
12 days of Christmas. Yeah.
Yes.
Have any of have any
Granted.
of you ever put up Christmas lights at a house?
No.
It is I have.
Well, don't
I
forget,
will-
Christmas,
okay,
Christmas
you can put the
decorations
lights-
were much simpler.
Yeah.
Guys,
Yeah.
We're off
We're
topic.
off
off
topic
and
again.
this is me just giving a gentle reminder because Kevin said we're not discussing Christmas tonight.
Yeah, and for that matter, Baron said it first.
No, I
And he-
mentioned Trinities.
You also mentioned not wanting Christmas until after Thanksgiving.
Yes.
So enough about Christmas.
Yes.
Halloween, specifically
we're
before we
involved
get
in
into
that time.
Amityville. I think it's also worth mentioning one of my favorite folklore stories, and another important part of Halloween, the story of Stingy Jack
Oh,
and the origin of the jack-o'-lantern.
yes. Do tell.
I think I remember this one, but
It's an Irish story
Yes, I'm aware.
about a very greedy man who winds up making a bet with the devil. Gets the devil up. I don't remember all the story very well, unfortunately, but he gets the devil up a tree and then carves the sign of a cross into the tree so the devil can't climb back down. Why exactly he couldn't jump or fly, I'm really not sure.
Oh,
This was
there's
the
too
much-
many branches, dude. You
This
think
was
I
the
like
much
jumping
less
down?
supernatural devil
But
back in those days.
he makes a deal with the devil, but the devil can't take his soul. Now, Jack gets down, dies.
Mm-hmm.
Heaven don't want him,
Damn right we didn't.
so he goes downstairs. Hell can't take him. So, and the variations depending on the story. Sometimes he takes them. Sometimes the devil takes them. Sometimes angels go and they take burning embers from hell, and they put them in a gourd and they give them to him, and he carries them about to light his way through the world. And to remember all of this is why we carve the faces into turnips and now pumpkins, and light candles within them as jack-o'-lanterns. One of his other names, Jack of the Lantern.
Or Jack Skellington. See, that's Halloweeny. That is not necessarily
That is very
Christmas-y. That's Halloweeny.
That bridges the gap in a wonderful way.
Yes.
Halloweeny.
That is the one time it is acceptable to blend Halloween and Christmas, is if you're talking about Nightmare Before Christmas.
Of course.
But, so that would be the origins of Halloween, as far as I know. Do you guys have anything to add? I feel like I'm probably leaving something out. Do any of our listeners have something to add, for that matter?
How about let's touch upon the reason why sweets were so prominent, or why they were what is given out, as opposed to
all I
just
know
offerings.
is it's just the treat. It's kid. You're giving it to kids.
Yeah.
What are you going to give the kids?
Actually,
Oh, we got our
the way
wicket.
that it actually used to work was it wasn't necessarily like sweets that were given out. It was food that was left out, much like you still see traditionally today in, say, Japan and whatnot. But in Celtic culture, you would leave out food for the spirits that were crossing over into the
Oh yeah,
field.
offerings
There
for
were
the
soul,
dead,
there were soul cakes.
which still happens in parts of Europe too, not just Japan.
This is true, but the original tradition was you would leave something out, libations for
Yes.
the souls as they were passing over. As time went on, it's actually a more recent phenomenon for it to be candies or baked goods and things like that. But normally, it was some type of food.
It's
I
official.
never thought of
Like
that,
within
but
the
Beth
last
is
year.
clearly 100% right.
You know what? Not for nothing. If I am capable of dying, I'm going to Ireland and I'm dying there, because at least this way they got libations on their front door.
I've told this to Misha. I'll tell this to you guys too. When I die, give me an Irish wake.
We'd have to take you to Ireland for that. I think they're illegal in the States.
A drinking party is not illegal in the States.
A drunken party, yes, but not an Irish wake.
Specifically, the Irish wake of the tradition. If somebody dies, you throw a party.
With their
damn
corpse.
right. With their
Granted,
corpse.
That's
I'm not
why.
concerned about throwing it with my corpse, but throw a freaking party.
Oh,
I die, I'm going to a better place. Don't cry for me later. Celebrate the fact I'm going home.
if I end up dying, I guarantee you they're gonna throw a party. I'm gonna have it requested to be an Irish wake. Okay, people are gonna show up. They're gonna be partying because I'm dead, and then somebody says, "So this is your first Irish wake?" I'm like, "Wait, this is an Irish wake?" I thought we were happy he was gone.
You know
One or
why
the
they,
other.
You know why they called it
both.
an Irish wake?
Wake the dead.
Yeah, the idea was to wake them up if they weren't actually dead.
That's the practical reason. The older reasons are more complicated. than that.
Well, yeah, it was a celebration, but it was also like that's why it got called a wake.
Well, that's
Was
what
that
Well,
supposedly
there's also
the
the
idea.
tradition in Ireland that if you actually weep too much for the dead, their spirits will come back and haunt you.
Yeah, it'll bring them back.
Wakes in general grew out of the idea that either one, if somebody didn't watch the body, literally somebody would watch the body, either for fear that the spirit of the dead would return, or that an evil spirit would possess the body and you wind up with a vampire. The practical upshot is, as Brian's saying, occasionally back in the day, yeah, people people were pronounced dead that weren't.
Yeah.
It happened.
But you know what? Nothing will wake you up faster than the smell of whiskey and a party going on.
Yeah.
You pull a Bernie immediately. You just go.
But in some, like in Greece, in some cultures, it's very serious that you watched that body until it was in the ground. There was always somebody with it day night.
Oh,
They
yeah.
will make sure he's gone.
I'm sure he's
Well,
not coming
the
back.
reality, a lot of our traditions around Halloween, around funerals,
Halloween.
around cemeteries, around Halloween, and for that matter, around weddings, all relate to superstition and fear
Oh yeah,
of spirits.
like
Of
viewings.
course.
Yep.
Well,
I mean,
that's
there's
also why you cover mirrors when somebody's passed away, even if the body's not in the house.
Mhm.
You don't want the soul to get trapped.
And the coffin could.
Good
and-
question.
And when they still had when they still had wakes inside people's personal homes, they made sure that they carried the body out the back door, never
Yes.
out the front.
And
You
you
know-
always let them out feet first.
Yep.
Yep.
This way they couldn't catch eye with somebody and essentially predict who was going to die next.
So two
Exactly.
things.
Yes.
One, while Beth is right, in most cultures you cover the mirrors just because of fear. That this, particularly in Irish culture, if memory serves, you cover reflective surfaces because the spirit can get trapped.
Mm-hmm.
Jewish have a much more practical reason for covering mirrors. They
Oh, yeah.
believe that you shouldn't have to look at yourself when you're grieving because you're usually kind of a mess.
Oh yeah, that's the whole Shiva. They have a
Yeah.
whole long-standing tradition and ritual surrounding grief and death.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of traditions when it comes to Halloween in general in regards to funeral practices, and
Mm-hmm.
in some ways the funerary practices got carried over into the holiday, and sometimes practices of the holiday got carried over into
Oh, yeah.
funerary practices. You know, display of bodies within the home. Originally,
You know when that changed?
Yes.
And why?
Yes, one, sanitary conditions for starters.
No. There's a very different reason, and there's actually no sanitary reason why you can't keep. Even now, there's no reasonable reason why you can prepare bodies in the home, and there is a movement among some morticians to teach people how so they can prepare their own loved ones for burial and save themselves a metric ton of unnecessary money.
I can understand that. I also know why living rooms are called living rooms now as opposed to parlors.
Yep.
There's that in particular.
The tradition of funeral homes, and more specifically, the tradition of embalming, started in the United States
Mm-hmm.
in the 19th century
Yes.
because of one man, Abraham Lincoln. When Lincoln was assassinated, the decision was made that, being the great American hero that he was seen as, they were going to embalm the body and send it out on trains so that everybody could see the dead hero, the dead president.
Right,
That's
I remember
understandable.
That changed a huge shift from having wakes in the home, the body being prepared and cleaned by the family, to all this elaborate embalming processes and things of that nature. And the reality of it is, embalming is unnecessary.
Well, yeah, because the body's not going to be out for that long.
Well, there's supposedly hygiene concerns, and
Yeah.
there really isn't. The actual reality is, with a few exceptions of someone who dying, like, I think, short of someone dying of a contagious disease or something of that effect, bodies are not particularly unsanitary. They can perfectly safely be buried in ordinary coffins or even just in the dirt. There is a growing pushback, not among the big mortuaries for obvious reasons, because they're this is an unrelated thing, but if anyone isn't aware of this, the big funeral homes are just about a giant scam. Dedicated to getting you to spend as much money on things you don't have to as they
Oh
can.
yeah, well,
And
even
I'd like-
cremating and stuff is more
and
expensive than it needs to be.
And they will lie to you until you have to pay for these big, expensive, like, containers to hold the body while it's cremated. No, you don't.
No, it's a cardboard box.
They will. I've been meaning. It got put on the back burner with everything else, but I want to have. There's a couple of morticians that are independent. They're not part of. Because the other thing is, most of the big funeral homes are actually owned by one big
Yeah.
corporation.
Figures.
They buy the mom and pop so they can keep the name and just turn it into this.
Yeah.
And I'd like to have one of these independent morticians. There's one I have my aunt on trying to reach out to because she has a really good YouTube channel.
Nice.
But about informing people and educating people about the scams and the overcharging and the things that are going on.
Right.
And aside from the fact she does some really cool stuff about death and not seeing death as this horrible thing and famous corpses and things of that nature, just the importance of this message of people are being gouged, the grieving are being gouged, and people's feelings
Yeah.
are being taken advantage of in a horrible way, and the public service of getting that information out to people.
See, that's interesting.
Yeah, this is why I want to try to have her or someone like her on the show.
Speaking of bodies,
Yeah.
Halloween, and a good connection between the two in regards to the whole embalming process. Have you ever heard of Elmer McGurdy?
Name's familiar, but I can't remember why.
Back in, I want to say, the mid 80s to early 90s, some kids were going through a haunted house attraction, okay? They ended up touching one of the wax bodies that were hanging up, and the
that
arm
one.
fell off.
Oh.
And the bone ended up showing that it was broken. Like, the arm broke off, and you could see a bone.
Oh, it's a different one than I'm thinking of.
And the thing is that when they realized this, they called the cops, and they examined the decoration. As it turns out, back in like the 1890s, this person ended up getting embalmed by getting coated in wax.
Wow.
And
old
the
house
thing
of
is
wax.
they basically coated the body in wax, and it had mummified him. And then they lost the body. And it ended up going from estate sale to estate sale as a decoration
As just a wax figure.
until the late 80s, early 90s, when this red plastic figurine ended up getting touched and the arm just fell off.
Wow.
And they had found out what had happened to Elmer McGurdy or something. I forget.
That's wild.
I know his first name was Elmer.
So the story I was thinking of is there's the guy who was trying to do one of the, and it's a common thing, I've seen it done at Haunted Woods and things like that, where you have the guy hanging,
Yeah.
and they use the rig, and the guy who screwed it up and hanged himself as part of, and nobody figured it out for a while, like a couple of days, because they thought it was part of the Halloween decoration.
Good decoration. Go figure. Talk about dedication and immersion.
Okay, so let's see. I think we've done Halloween pretty well.
And we're-
Oh, there's something else.
Oh.
We're coming up in the half an hour, so I want to switch over to Amityville. Although there is something else I want to mention, because this comes up every year, and right now there are radio stations and television shows and TV news that are warning people about this, which is razor blades and poison and candy, and it's horse manure.
It's
a
never
myth.
happened.
Yeah, yes, it has, with the proviso. There are one or two examples where a child bit into candy that had a razor blade in it, and every single time it's ever happened, their parent is the one who did it.
Oh, wow.
The origin
It's
started with some guy that decided to like throw like arsenic or something inside of his own kid's candy.
Yeah, and a couple of times it's happened with razor. I think
with
once or
razor
twice the
blades.
razor blades.
And it
Okay.
was
And the
own
reality
parents.
is, for the most part, if you bite into a piece of candy with a razor blade, you're gonna have a bleeding mouth and a razor blade in there.
Yeah.
You're not likely to swallow it.
No.
Yeah, you're gonna kind of realize what you got because razor blades ain't exactly small.
Dude, if I bite into something that has like a especially hard peanut,
Yeah.
I'll notice it
Yeah,
immediately.
stop.
Much less,
Well,
something
yeah.
like
The
a freaking razor blade.
But I'm never going to say don't be at least a little bit careful, because there are lots of crazy people. in
Well,
the
yeah,
world.
but going down to the hospital and getting
But,
all your candy
yeah,
X-rayed, all that kind of stuff that used to happen.
You know what my parents did when I was a kid? They just go through and just take a look at things, see if the
Take one sample of each.
You know. Oh yeah. Well, what I would suggest for parents, if you're honestly concerned, and I'm not saying it's crazy, because again, there are sick people in the world. Go through the candy. Look at the wrapper. Is the wrapper punctured? If they stuck razor blade in it, they had to puncture the wrapper.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Wrapper. Look
Yeah,
for
if it's not a
punctures,
store-wrapped
look
candy.
for something. Avoid apples and things like that unless you know the person for obvious reasons. And realistically, if it's an apple, just slice it apart.
Yeah.
That's all.
You can check it.
And don't eat the freaking seeds, because they're poison all by themselves.
Yeah.
Ah, cool. Bring them in. Hello, you're live.
Hello,
Hey.
Hello? Who's this?
this is Rena.
Hey, Raina, how are you?
Hello.
Hey.
I'm good. I had a question for you guys.
Go for it.
Fire away.
So I was wondering if any Norse mythology ended up making its way into our Halloween tradition.
That's a good question.
Oh, Beth might know.
That's why I look directly at our producer.
Yeah, it's like-
him.
She's sort of our mythology.
I mean,
especially
yeah.
when it comes to underworld,
Yeah.
yes, that is my forte.
it could be the whole concept of wearing the masks. Yeah.
I think that's still Celtic. Most of the Halloween things I can think of are Celtic.
Most of them are Celtic. The main, not primarily Halloween traditions, but funerary traditions of bathing the body before sending it off.
Yeah.
Though probably the best light show you're ever going to see, considering they used to set the body on fire.
Yeah, Viking funerals.
Fire.
Or a hunter funeral if you're that kind of nerd.
It's always fun.
But they're, let's see, as far as Norse,
I mean, Norse was massively influential on Christmas.
Yeah, the
It
Germanic.
was, but as far as Halloween, the only thing I can think of is the general mischief of it, because Yule was essentially the new year for the Vikings. That's why they held it in such high regard. But
Yep.
for every culture, the harvest did have their own traditions. It is currently escaping me which one was specifically for the Norse.
And she's thinking really hard. I could see her face scrunching up, Rena. So
Yeah, I'm
it's,
trying to
it's
think.
kind of funny.
I would think, because, I mean, most of the ancient world, your life heavily revolved around the harvest.
Now, not for
Yeah,
nothing.
For
Cycle.
obvious reasons.
You have a trickster god necessarily within Norse itself. I mean, you got Loki. You
You got
got to wonder
tricksters
whether
in
or not
most
there
traditions.
was a some sort of influence one way or the other. No?
Slipping through. I can't think of anything.
You actually
And
hit us
Loki
with
was responsible for tricking the death of Balder, which
Maybe.
might have a reference there.
But there are trickster figures
does,
in
but
almost
that
every
was-
folklore. That's the thing.
In the closest thing I would think of, because if I'm remembering correctly, and it's been a while,
I'll correct
it
you.
was more Eastern European areas, middle-ish area, that essentially had the concept of, and it was also Celts as well, but then again, you have the synchronism from conquest and what have you, where there were essentially two kings at each point of the year. There was the Oak King, and there
And
was
the Holly
King. And the thing is, in their respective high points, winter for the Holly, summer for the Oak. Essentially, I believe they would do something for the balance that would come. That would be essentially right around the time of the last harvest. But again,
Yeah.
is escaping me off the top of my head. But like with any tradition back in the day, there would also be huge feast celebrations as
Yeah,
well.
festivals.
Which is, of course, the obvious thing we also left out about Samhain is that, for those who don't know, it was the Celtic New Year.
Huzzah. Get blasted.
Just before we go, not to interrupt you, Beth, just, it's like, we should have put that in there.
Rena, I have to say, you gave us one of the most interesting questions we've gotten in a while. So
Makes me
thank
wish
you
Drew
so
was around, because
much.
that would be a good one to ask for that.
Yeah, Norse
Yeah.
mythology is not our
I'll
specialty.
do some poking for you, Raina, and see what I can turn up for a future show, because I honestly don't know.
Yeah. I said, thank you so much.
Yes. Stumper questions
You're
are
very
always
welcome.
good.
Happy
Jen-
Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you for
too.
calling.
Do you have
Happy
any other
Halloween,
questions
Ian.
or comments?
If I do, I'll call back.
Okay. Then have a good night.
Bye.
All right.
Love you, Raina.
Thank you very much.
That's done. Bye.
Good night, Raina. So,
It's
yeah,
always good when we get a new caller coming
Yes.
in.
Yeah.
it's
I'm
like,
so jazzed. Maybe it's the fact that I'm wearing normal clothes.
yeah, you're throwing everybody off, and people are thinking,
You're less
call in,
intimidating.
he's less intimidating.
I'm supposed to be intimidating. I'm me.
True, but now you're not formally dressed, so you're not as, you're still intimidating, you're just not as intimidating.
Great. I got to correct it now. There we go. Now I'm back to being me again.
Or at least you have you have a kind of an Indiana Jones look going now.
Remember, it's evil Doctor Strange. That's what Amisha said.
Fair enough.
Oh, the hat is not Doctor Strange, but
No, the hat is me.
But, so,
So,
all right.
the most famous demonically haunted house in American history.
The most
The
famous
Amityville
ring
Horror.
of all.
So let's start the story where it okay. A lot of people ask a really reasonable question, which is, why was the house haunted? There are a lot of crazy stories. There's a story that a man by the name of Hank Ketchum, who had supposedly fled the Salem witch trials and was an actual witch, had lived there. There was a man by the name of Hank Ketchum that did live on the property. There's no evidence that he was a witch.
no relation to Ash.
Exactly. Also, there's the story that the local Indian tribe used it as essentially an insane asylum. They didn't do that either.
Nope.
There are a bunch of other goofy, weird, crazy stories, Indian burial grounds and whatnot. It's all horse manure. I'll give you my personal theory about why the house was haunted. So one night at 3:15 in the morning, a man by the name of Ronald DeFeo Jr., known
yes.
also as Butch, got up in the middle of the night, went from room to room in that house, and pulled a bullet in the back of the head of his father, his mother, and his 3 siblings. There's a bunch of things about this case, and folks, if you're interested in Amityville Horror, I would recommend going to YouTube and looking up Amityville Horror Week Lou Gentili. Back in the day when I did the Lou Gentili show, we did a week on this case. So I'm going to get into some stuff you don't hear very often, because I've actually talked to George Lutz and Chris Lutz and Kathy Lutz. I've talked to the first reporter who was on the scene of those murders, who was a friend of Ed and Lorraine Warren. I've talked to Lorraine Warren. I've heard, and you can hear some of these interviews by looking that up on YouTube. You want to hear what happened in the house, go listen to it from the people that lived it. But I'll say this about DeFeo. There are 2 things about that case that the reporter who was there on and when I say the first reporter, I mean he was there the night the murders happened. You know, the night the cops found out about the murders. He was the first reporter to show up on that scene.
Right.
The cops to this day don't understand this. 1, it was a Marlin 316 rifle. That rifle does not normally have, nor is there any evidence the one that he used had a silencer.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the hard reality that if you shoot 2, Mom and Dad were laying side by side in the bed. All members of his family were laying on their stomachs for some reason, which is somewhat odd. Neither moved, neither squirmed, neither got up, neither ran away. No one else in the house moved or squirmed or ran away. They were all found in their beds. How did 2 people laying side by side not hear I mean, yeah, okay, you're terrified. Maybe you don't necessarily get up and run, but there's gonna be some signs of reacting, trying to move out of an instinct. When you hear a high-powered rifle go off right next to you and hit somebody in the back of the head. But there's no signs that either parent even woke up. There's no signs that the children woke up. The nearest neighbor was sitting in his kitchen, 30 feet away, with his windows open, facing the house. The only thing he heard was a dog barking. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Nope.
And again, the most common explanation I hear, which would explain the neighbor, would be, well, it was a silencer. And here's the thing, and you're military. I'm sure you know this.
Very well.
Brian, you probably know this because you're pretty smart.
Yeah.
The reality is, silencers you don't get a little pew pew noise when you shoot something with a silencer.
All it does is it. Instead of like a bang at like volume at 10, you maybe lower that bang to like 7, but 7 is still pretty obnoxiously loud.
Somebody 30 feet away, okay, especially near the water because of the way that being near the road or dampens sounds.
Even 30 feet away, you'll flinch from the sound.
Yeah. It's like, maybe. I'm not saying it's likely, but maybe.
If he
2
was
people laying side by side in the bed, they would have heard it.
No way. I'll expand on the whole 30 feet bit,
Yeah.
okay? Especially when it comes to concussive blasts and sounds
Yeah.
of that nature, okay? Even with a silencer, okay? The only remote way that he could not have heard something, and I don't know what the weather conditions were like that evening,
I don't remember off the top of my head.
but 1, he would have had to have been severely hearing impaired.
And he wasn't.
Okay. 2, there had to have been a complete and total closed loop to the sound itself. In other words, the windows in the actual Amityville house had to have been closed. And the room in which the gunshots all took place had to have had at least 3 or 4 different walls to travel through in order for it to be able to exit where the actual opening was. That's 2. 3,
At least one of them was in the basement, I believe.
thunderclaps had to have happened in succession, or at least very severe weather had to have been happening during those gunshots, timed perfectly. We're talking about lightning strikes and thunder rolls with every single pull of the trigger in order for you to be able to explain why he didn't hear it. It might also explain why the kids didn't hear the gunshots either. But
Possible.
then again, if the weather was clear and at the same time, it makes 0 sense.
And the other common explanation, again, very reasonable, and we're always think about rational explanations. Don't jump to the paranormal, is they were drugged or they were bound. Drug would leave something in the toxicology. They
True.
weren't. Bound would have left marks on the body. They didn't find those either.
There's only one small hitch with that. The only thing I can say along the lines of the toxicology bit. Sometimes you have to know to look for arsenic to find it. And the thing is that if they were all given arsenic,
And rat poison, which would have been common.
and back then, it wasn't just an emetic. It actually did kill if it got put in there. And considering the house was in New England and it did have a basement, an old school basement, rats could have been a thing. He could have poisoned them all. They could have all been fairly sedated. And then the other condition. I'm not, believe me, I believe there's 100% of a supernatural bent.
Yeah.
You know,
Preternatural,
with logic.
not supernatural. Supernatural
Preternatural.
from God.
Strike that.
I'm a pedantic pain in the ass.
Oh, no. You want to know what the thing is that if you got the lexicon to pull it, you got the lexicon to pull it. But even with arsenic, one, you got to know when to look for it, okay? And even then, back then, the tests for it were still kind of up in the air.
Yeah.
There was no real way to be able to determine for it.
And if you see an obvious cause of death, you might not look further.
Exactly. You know, and even then, it was one of those few poisons where there weren't any oblique symptoms that would show on the body post-mortem.
True.
They would just look like they either died in their sleep or whatever sort of pre-existing natural condition that they had beforehand would be determined as the cause of death.
True. Except, the cause of death would have obviously been the bullet at the back of the head.
Yes, in which case then why would you do a toxicology report on a corpse that had
To try
already
to
had a
figure
bullet
out
through?
why the bloody hell they hadn't moved.
True, but
which
even
was a
then,
big question of the cops.
you gotta look for the you gotta know to look for the arsenic to
here's the
find
thing.
it.
The next questions that were raised. So DeFeo is famous for having said in court that a figure with black hands handed him the rifle and followed him through the house. Now, without commenting one way or the other about that, here's the reality. Butch DeFeo is a pathological liar.
Okay.
He has, every time the man comes up for parole, he has a new version of what happened that night. His original excuse when he called the cops was that the local mafia did it. Because his father ran a cars shop, and there had been at least at the time some rumors to that effect. He had said that his sister, the oldest sister, Dawn, he killed mom and dad because he was known to have hated his mother and his father, but he loved his siblings. So there's a big question of why did he kill the kids. He has claimed at one point that he killed mom and dad. He left. Dawn killed the children. He came back, was horrified, and murdered Dawn. He's told a wide range of other bizarre stories, none of which is true. But the point of this story is, and again, I don't know. I am not saying for certain. I don't know. With one exception, I've never had any interaction with Butch DeFeo. The one exception is he actually did write into the show. Because we had a man by the name of Rick Osuna on. Rick had written a book called The Night the DeFeos Died.
Right.
Self-published it, and it's really obvious if you read the book why. Because, the man needed to run spell check on his book, among other things. And he had claimed that he had talked to Butch in prison and gotten the real story of what happened. He basically recycled the story of Dawn committing some of the murders.
Okay.
And Butch actually wrote us to say, no, I never told. What Butch said, and this is actually the one thing he said about that night I actually believe, is that he has never told anyone what really happened that night, and he never will. That I can believe.
Okay.
Beyond that, I don't trust anything he said because, again, pathological liar. But when people ask, why was the house haunted? 6 brutal murders of 6 innocent people happened in that house. That is enough of an aura of a disaster to draw demonic activity to a building without anything else happening in that house.
Yeah, that alone would have made the place a hot spot.
We know, and they even talk about it in the novel The Amityville Horror, that George and Kathy were into transcendental meditation, a bunch of other new agey practices that may have contributed to it. The one son, Danny Lutz, did a documentary a few years ago called My Amityville Horror, where he put forward some speculation that George had been into some black magic as well.
Right.
That may have played into it. I don't know. I can't say for certain. Obviously, what I can say for certain is 6 people were tragically murdered in that house. That is all the reason a house needs.
Well, then you
Now,
got
knowing that, why would you move in there?
Well, George said, a couple of reasons. One, George said, when the dead are dead, that's the end of it. He wasn't concerned about that. He was not, and he was a biker guy. He was a pretty tough guy. And the other reality is they got the house fairly cheap.
Yeah, and back then, getting a 3-level like that.
Yeah, it was a 3-level
in Schenectady, New York.
Yeah, upper class area, on the water, 3 levels, boathouse. It was a good deal for the house that they bought.
Yeah, this was a house that at least you were talking better part of six figures.
Now, I will say there's a story about why
These
they
days.
bought the house, which has become popular, true explanation, but I find laughable, and I'll explain why. So, William Weber, who was a defense attorney, was Butch DeFeo's defense attorney, eventually contacted the Lutzes, and this much is known. He was originally contacting the Lutzes to try to write the book. He claimed that him and George and Kathy, over many bottles of wine, hatched this plot that they were going to move into the house and claim that house was haunted to get him a new defense. One, I find it very suspicious that an experienced trial attorney would have thought demon possession was a viable defense
No.
against multiple murder.
When was the
70s, late 70s.
Not for nothing. Back then, considering the mass craze of a little bit of the
Granted.
panic, they probably figured we'll be progressive and we'll try and throw that defense out there.
Arguably, the other reality of the thing is, I mean, pretty much his only evidence is a bunch of interviews that he gave himself saying this. They admit, the Lutzes have freely admitted that, they talked to him about writing the book. When it went to court, because there's another thing people bring up is why didn't they try to defend that the house was real in court? Because it's really hard to defend my house is haunted in a court of law.
I mean, the thing is that
When the judge said from the get-go that there is no such thing as... The judge in the case said there is no such thing as ghosts, and I'm going into this assuming the Lutzes made it up to make money.
99% of any and all haunting information, I could tell you right now what a judge would state, okay? At least in modern times.
Yeah.
They would consider that to be circumstantial evidence without any probable investigative nature to be quantifiable. Therefore, it's held to be inadmissible. Plain and simple.
Now, here's what we know for certain. The Lutzes spent 28 days in the house.
Okay. A
And
lunar
then they
cycle.
fled. They left everything they owned in the house. There are photographs proving this. They didn't go back for their stuff. In fact, and this is getting slightly ahead of us, when Anne Lorraine went in to investigate the house, not at their request, I might add, when they contacted George and Kathy, they requested that they go in and get the deed because they needed the deed to deal with the bank. And they wouldn't go into the house, even to get the deed. Now, here's one of the things I know because I've talked to the people that lived it. If you watch the movie, if you read the book, paranormal activity happens over the entire month, that lunar cycle, as you said, that they were there. It didn't. Because everybody's reaction to that movie, as long as I've seen that movie, talked to the people about this case, is why didn't they move?
Exactly.
Get out!
I would have been out after the first day or first week. And
The incident with the
Always
priest,
seems to
where the
be.
priest was told to get out, was fairly early on. Everything else, for the most part, happened in the last week. The reason it was changed for the book
Was to make it more
is
believable.
is to make it more believable and to make it more interesting. Because 28 days of 21 days of living in the house and nothing happens is boring. People don't want to hear all hell broke loose in 7 days. They want to hear about how horrible stuff happened from the beginning. You toughed it out for 28 days.
yeah, understandable.
And this is a common thing people don't necessarily understand. The book was not written it is not a scientific or legal document. It is a book. Its purpose is to make money.
It is a fictional work based upon
A true
actual
story.
events. Or better yet, actually, you know what? I consider those to be period pieces. I mean, not
It's a little
necessarily
more
period of a
accurate than
time period, not necessarily of a
Yeah.
time period, but more or less a time within a particular event, using the set pieces, using the individuals that took place in it, but not necessarily dictating history.
But the stuff that happened in the book is generally accurate. Here's one of the funny things. So there's a story in the book about how the priest in question was driving down the highway and the hood on his car flipped up. And it flips up in a very specific way. Now, Dr. Kaplan, who we're getting to, who is right up your alley because he's the father of vampirology, according to him at least, points out in his book that the model of car mentioned in the novel, Do we have another caller?
Hello again.
Hello
Sorry
again.
to bother you.
No.
Oh,
it's
no, no.
Serena.
Never bothering us.
So you guys were talking about the Amityville house. I was wondering if there was any real truth behind the Indian burial ground thing.
None whatsoever.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, he mentioned that at the beginning.
Yeah, the Indians did not bury their dead in that area. It's a myth.
Complete and total hogwash.
Spread by Hans Holzer, who's one of the... There's a trio of investigators that investigated the house. Hans Holzer is one of the more credible, but not, in my opinion, not the most credible groups that went in. Certainly he's more credible than Kaplan, but we're getting... There's a progression to the story, but no, yeah, there's no truth to the Indian burial ground whatsoever. Good question, though.
Yeah, I like that question.
Yep.
Anything else you want to know?
Not at the moment, so we're good.
Okay,
All
cool.
right, awesome.
Thanks for again. Thank you for calling.
Bye.
Sure.
Bye. We always welcome questions, and especially good questions. That was a good question.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice to have callers.
That too.
That's always
Instead of just the
awesome.
three of us bouncing off of each other. So
And I'm bouncy.
a lot of the changes that were made. Well, so yeah, the hood of the car in question couldn't have flipped up the way it did,
Mm-hmm.
and then they changed it to a model of car that where it could. Kaplan's right. The change was made from a car that could do, between cars that could and couldn't. He got it backwards. The earliest editions of the book, yeah, that's the model that the hood could flip up the way that's described. The later editions of the book were the model that it couldn't, which is the reality of edition to edition. Things get changed around.
Go figure.
Oh, and I'll get into one of the other weird things about the case.
Please do. Or back to
So-
Kaplan.
Well, I want to finish with the Lutza story.
All right.
So a lot of the changes in the book in general were changes of scale. Like the book talks about them floating 6 feet above the bed.
Yeah.
Never happened in the Amityville house. Happened later when they fled the house. Never happened in the house itself. They would levitate, but it was more like 6 inches over the bed. Now, the reason why they jumped it from inches to feet was dramatics and to sell a story.
Oh, yeah.
By and large, the book gets it fairly close. The movies, the first movie and the remake are where they really just went off the rails because George and Kathy had a degree of influence over the book. They had no influence whatsoever over the movie.
No, nobody ever tends
So-
to.
The story of the 3 investigations. So they move out and flee the house. They get contacted by Dr. Stephen Kaplan, who wants to investigate the house.
Right.
Now, there's 2 conflicting versions of what happens. Now, the way George tells it is that Kaplan contacted them, and he's like, okay, give me a day, I want to look into your background. George is like, I want to look into your background, I want to see, because he wanted somebody to investigate the house, but he wanted somebody who wasn't full of shit.
All right.
And then 24 hours later, he told them, no, we're not going with you, we're going to go with somebody else.
Okay.
Kaplan's version of it is that Kaplan told them, I'm going to investigate the house, but if I find out you're lying, I'm going to expose you.
Of course.
Now, who's telling, he said, she said, who's telling the truth, who's lying? I will say this. At the time, Stephen Kaplan not only announced himself as the father of vampirology, sincerely believed in the existence of vampires and believed that they had secretly infiltrated the U.S. government.
Well, that's true.
Published books on the subject.
Oh, interesting.
Can you see why they might not have gone with the man?
That part's true.
Well, there's
Sorry to blow the whistle, but yeah.
didn't Danny Lutz flat out state that his father was also somebody that had a tendency to be very much embellishing and full of shit himself?
I don't know, but probably to a point.
Yeah.
But the point is, Kaplan had a lot. Basically, he was a glory hound. He claimed to be the expert on vampires when vampires were popular. He claimed to be an expert on werewolves when werewolves were popular. He claimed to be a ghost hunter when that was popular. He was an expert on whatever would get him publicity.
So, in other words, if he was around today, he'd think that he was better than Max Brooks.
Yeah, basically.
Oh, dear gods.
And here's the other thing. Well, 2 other things. One is that Kaplan, by his own admission, never investigated the house.
Okay.
He talked to the Lutzes. He watched a bunch of interviews. He went on TV with Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they had a horrible decades-long screaming match between the 2 sides about whether the house was haunted or not, and back and forth. But according to his own book, he went to the house while they were basically one of the friends of the Lutzes was doing yard sale basically, and said, he was a friend of Lee being George's common nickname at the time, and got into the house for 15 minutes. 15 minutes does not an investigation make.
No.
And then many, many years later, he was there for a party. Yeah. So, again, the man never did an actual investigation inside of the house.
Interesting.
2, Ed cornered him on live television and asked him what, in my opinion, is a relatively simple question. What sort of equipment do you bring with you on an investigation?
Nadachi.
Couldn't name anything.
Wait, you mean to tell me he couldn't even name...
Couldn't even, come up with a tape recorder. Now, his defense and his wife's defense was that Stephen was, useless with technology. I can sympathize, but I'm not the most technologically savvy person in the world, but I can tell you the name of every piece of equipment I've ever used inside of a haunted house.
It's probably because you bought all of them.
No, even back when I didn't buy any of them and Lou brought them in, I knew what I was using. I had at least a basic idea of what it was supposed to do. I didn't, because you don't run around using something. I'm a big believer. You don't run into a haunted house and wave something around just because somebody said, use an EMF detector.
Yeah.
Get some understanding of what you're doing.
I wasn't implying that you wouldn't know what it was. It's in my mentality, if you know that something is effective and capable, and you do your research on it, that's when you would actually lay down the cash for it.
True, yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
Although it's also the reality of, for God's sakes, camera, audio recorder, they're basic notebook. I mean, God's sakes, you can't name one piece of equipment you're bringing into a house. Flashlight,
at least a flashlight.
A flashlight.
A flashlight.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Then there's a whole bunch of other crazy things happen. He showed up with a witch on the property demanding to be let into the house. Reporters as well. Finally, what happens is Channel 5, I want to say in New Jersey, contacted Ed and Lorraine Warren. They'd already done a story on the Warrens. And at this point, the Warrens were pretty early in their career, but they'd also been riding high off of having recently done a well-publicized investigation and lecture at West Point Military Academy.
That's right.
And not at the Lutz's request, but at the news media's request, they investigated the house. And they said, along with Alex Tanis, who was from the American Society for Psychic Research, another gentleman from the same society. And they have always maintained that the house was haunted.
Believable.
Now, do I know for absolute certain the house was haunted? I wasn't there. I don't know. I will say this, and don't take my word for it. Again, go over to YouTube, look up Amityville Horror Week, Lou Gentili, listen to George and Kathy and Chris talk about their experiences in the house. Those people are afraid. They were terrified of that stuff. They didn't want to talk about it because when they talked about it, it'd start happening again.
I believe it.
And I'll say this. First night, we did 5 nights on it, where we had all these guests on in a row. First night, we were blessed enough to have George Lutz and Lorraine Warren. Sadly, this was very early into Ed's illness that ultimately would take his life, so Ed wasn't able to join us. He had basically been no longer verbal at this point. But Lorraine was gracious enough to call in for the first hour. All through this first hour, we get reports of people saying, we're hearing voices. They're calling Lorraine a whore. They're calling all sorts of obscenities, blasphemies being said. I didn't hear them personally. But again, you can go and listen to it. It's on YouTube. Now, we did a 2-hour show. It was supposed to be 3 hours. Now, we started at 9 o'clock at night. So 10 o'clock, Lorraine goes to bed. No, not ladies. She's an old lady. She's in her 80s at this point. No fault. George is still with us. And John Zaffis, and Lorraine's nephew, had done a bunch of cases, though he wasn't on Amityville, had called in. And we're talking to George, we're talking to John, and we have somebody call in to ask a question. Power goes out. Computers go down. Everything goes out. Get the power back up. Get the computers back on. We get the 3 callers on the line. We can't get the show working for the life of us. Finally, in utter frustration, because the original plan was we'd have George on the first night. Second night, we're going to just kind of do a recap and then move on from there.
Right.
It's like we just go to George and John and go, guys, could you just call in again and do this tomorrow? Because it was great. We wanted to keep going. And said, same thing, caller, can you call in and ask your question tomorrow? We're happy to have it, but we can't get anything working. The three of them get off the line. The power comes back. Then all of a sudden everything's working fine again.
Interesting.
We had weird stuff happen during that show. That was one of the weirder. That's not counting. And then other things got knocked off shelves, things like that. All of the lovely experiences we had talking about Amityville. And I noticed we're already past 7:30.
Yeah. I was gonna.
Yeah, and you want what the thing is that it would be good to be able to carry it over into next week.
Yes.
Without a doubt.
So we're going to wrap it up for tonight. Baron is going to read our other sponsor.
And then all
we'll
the
sign out.
fun, yes. Everyone's concerned about internet security these days, from government to major corporations. And even the average internet user should be concerned about who's seeing your online information and how that information can be used. Well, NordVPN is there to actually answer all the questions you could possibly have and give you the solutions that you're looking for. Now, for those of you that don't know, VPN's a virtual private network. It protects your IP address, keeps your online activity protected. And with NordVPN, it's protected by military-grade encryption. Now, you connect to Nord's protected network, they connect to the internet. It's a layer of protection between you and all the viruses, malware, and snoopers out there. And it works on all devices, too. It could work on your phone, your tablet, 6 devices at a time, regardless of what operating system you use. And it works with them all. You can access anything you want, streaming content, YouTube, us, if you are so inclined. And it's a great way, subvert firewalls. If you're working at a country, working in a country where they're not too internet savvy, too friendly in that regard, and it's a great way to be able to keep your own surfing to yourself. Now they have easy plans that start at $11.95 down to 3-year plans that are as low as $275 a month. I'm sorry. You should check it out over at NordVPN.com. It's easy plans. They'll work with you. I guarantee you won't regret it.
But that's going to wrap it up for tonight. Next week, we will touch on Amityville again, finish up. There's a little more to say.
Oh, yeah.
Probably just because it's another one that always causes fun things to happen during radio. We'll talk about Annabelle.
Oh, dear God. Aren't they releasing a movie about that now?
No,
Dedicated?
let's not talk about the movie. Let's not talk about the movie. But I'll talk a little bit about Annabelle. Maybe we'll do some EVPs or something. And celebrate the fact it's Dia de los Muertos. I want to remind folks as well to check out my new series about the Empty Faces, the Woods. I do want to point out, because we sort of did a mini advertisement for them. This is not a sanctioned, sponsored type of thing. I just happen to think they're cool and think it's something people might be interested in.
There you go.
I'd love if any of you happen to be listening. I'd be more than happy to do some sort of sponsorship deal. But at the moment, nope, it's my unbiased opinion.
Fantastic.
That's going to do it for us tonight. This is Kevin Mears saying good night and God bless.
Brian McKinley saying keep your fangs sharp.
There you go. You finally got one.
Finally got it. Just in time for Halloween.
Finally, Brian.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
And this is Baron Voltage saying avoid lightning rods.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Alrighty.
That was a good show.